Well, here we are. It seems like we've gotten to the point where I can kind of start talking about the stories. Before I get into the story itself, I do have to talk a little bit about branding and what branding is in general. Now, when you create a brand, it's not just a name and a number and everything. So I've got ChatGPT here to help me out to define this for you guys. It says that a brand is more than just a logo, name, or a color scheme. It's a complex set of perceptions, feelings, and attitudes that consumers have about a particular product, service, or company. It represents the identity of a product or service and differentiates it from the competitors in the market. Now, to get into more detail about what that means, the the act of branding, I guess, comes from creating a stamp or identifying something with a mark of some kind. That's what a logo is, that's what the letters are, and so forth. So it's an identity, and it's the identity of your product, and the identity of your product shares all of the feelings that I talked about earlier. And the identity of the product is also encapsulating the people that make the product or the service. Now, it's not about just products and services. You have to understand that you also, as a person, can be a brand. There's a self branding strategy that you can take on finding a new job, for example, or selling yourself and your services and what you're capable of doing. So it's kind of like your identity, your persona, or something like a projection of what you can do for other people. Why they create the product is extremely important. Not only because it goes into the brand or the marketing and all of these things like that, but why you create the product effectively will carry on to the experience that people have within that product or service. Now, if you're just a manufacturer and you create it just because you want to, just make extra money and all of these things, you're going to run into some issues with marketing and so forth, just as if you're kind of an agency and you really don't care about what happens, with your clients and things like that. It kind of creates an issue. What's important for a brand is that you tell a story. Now, that brings me to my next point, and that is storytelling. It's the one of the oldest forms of communication on the planet, and storytelling is probably the most effective way of creating interest. Now, that would effectively be correlated to the amount of interest that is brought into the brand and can directly affect your sales. It's critical that we think about the stories that we tell our clients and the stories that we generate, putting it together with the identity. So a story obviously has, a protagonist, an antagonist, and all of these things. So it's important that a brand has a similar situation. For example, when we talk about competitors, they're only just antagonists of your story. The protagonist of your story is the brand. And the other people that are around the story are your employees and the people that create your brand. And that's why it's critical that you talk about not only what your brand or protagonist does, but the journey of your protagonist from the beginning to the end. It has to have that kind of character arc or something like that. And the story that you tell about your employees, the protagonist and the antagonist, obviously becomes extremely difficult if it's a lie. So a lot of the things that you have to kind of generate or kind of follow through with your brand also carries over to how you interact with your employees and your clients and things like that. The competitors that actually follow through the marketing will be able to do much better than you. It's an opportunity for a competitor to really rise above your product just by generating a more effective story, or by creating a much more truthful or compelling story. That's why a lot of the times when a company has good corporate governance or good employee satisfaction, and it has a good way of approaching the antagonists rather than straight up demonizing them, a complex kind of story, it's a lot easier for a brand to put that into the marketing material without having to really force the situation, and it just kind of flows. The brand and selling of the product is just as simple as telling your own story. When there's ill intentions, or there's forced attitudes within the company, or it's just kind of a cash grab, that becomes a little bit harder, and you have to hire people that are trying to tell a story, and they're going up against the grain. It becomes difficult, it becomes painful, it becomes just kind of difficult to manage and unsustainable, because eventually you're going to get somebody who actually loves what they do, who loves the people that they're with, and brings them together to be able to solve the problems together. And sometimes that doesn't happen. So just to go over some of the main points about what ChatGPT, my best friend, goes into and talks about what makes a brand successful are the unique value proposition, the consistency, the emotional connection, the understanding your audience, the quality and reliability, effective communication, adaptability, employee engagement and community building, and analyzing feedback. It sounds like a story to me. Really, a lot of the times in business, we tend to overcomplicate things. We tend to give buzzwords to things, but effectively, you're just telling a story. That's what I plan on doing. I think that's what the series is going to be based on. It's going to be based on me kind of getting into the stories of what I do, the stories of my experiences, the stories of the problems that I solve, the protagonists, the antagonists, and all of the character arcs. So I hope you guys are going to enjoy all of these stories that I'm about to bring forward. And I look forward to hearing your comments and all of the things that you guys have to say about, a story. All right, guys, stay tuned, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.